Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The SPA in SPAlife stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is intentional living. Amazing people like you share ways to live by design and with purpose to ensure that this short ride of life occurs with choice, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-giving knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and creating a positive impact through intentional living. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. Welcome to our next episode. We're doing something a little bit different here today. We're actually doing a collaborative podcast, one where we are bringing together the Live Your Spa Life show with the TheIDEA.World. For people in Spa Life who don't know Kerry, he has been 30 years retired law enforcement. He's also the executive director of the TheIDEA.World, really focusing on de-escalation skills and tools in the world. And we do a lot of collaboration things together. So we thought it'd be fun, kind of the week of Christmas, as people are looking at what is the most impactful thing that we can do. And with our episode and our theme for this year being intentional living, really looking at this time of year of how we can be more intentional, and especially with our devices. And so we really looked at how to navigate a digital detox. So Kerry, why did we look at this as being like, why do we think people need to hear more about this?
Well, not just this time of year, but any time of the year, but especially when you're spending time with family, or you're trying to reestablish a connection. Maybe the relationship that you have isn't as deep and as rich and as fulfilling as you want it to be. Oftentimes we can trace that directly back to having our head buried in our phones or our tablets or our computers because we're working so much. And especially with more remote work happening, and that brings that device-centered time directly into the household. How are you going to connect with your loved ones? So being able to find harmony in a connected world and not balance, because people talk about the work-life balance. We use the word harmony for a specific reason.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when people talk about balance, I think that people automatically go, well, that's not realistic because it's never going to be exactly balanced. We know that at certain times we, especially as entrepreneurs, we need to push for a deadline or a goal or something that's happening, but we also want to at some point come back around and be able to have the time with the people that we love. And, with entrepreneurs in particular, there's, especially with people working from home, there's this sense where you have like a 24/7, business where you don't have any time off. And so some of the tools and things that we've used is I actually put one of those paper clocks on the outside of Kerry's office to be like, okay, what time are you actually closing today? So that we can transition into other things, because we get excited about our businesses. We talk about them a lot. And so you want to be able to have other conversations where you're not just talking about business all the time, and that you do have that off time to be able to restore yourself.
Especially when you're 24/7 with the people that you work with, you tend to get caught up in those conversations that are work centered. A lot of entrepreneurs experience this. If you're a first responder and you're together with another first responder, maybe I don't know, is it ever happen where a cop and a nurse get together, or a cop and another cop, or a firefighter and a paramedic? Yeah, it happens. And teachers and teachers. So, and teachers and cops. And so we're all very much in the areas that IDEA serves, the K through 12 school teachers, first responders, police, fire, medical services. We tend to understand where those partners are coming from. And so and if you're doing a business where you're together 24/7, it's easy to always find yourselves talking about a particular topic, and being able to branch out and realize that there's more to this person than just their job. is really, really critical. So when we talk about balance and harmony, I want you to picture an orchestra, and the violins are playing at the same time that the trombones are playing and the drums, but maybe you hear the drums more at a particular point in the song, or you hear the guitar at a particular point, or maybe the lead singer is doing an a cappella portion. So, but they all blend together, and it's not just an either or. It doesn't mean just because you're really successful in your career that you can't also be a great mom. And so that's that harmony that we talk about. So I really steer away from that work-life balance in anything. I look at it at the harmony perspective. But let's talk just a little bit about kind of that term digital landscape and what that looks like today. Is everywhere you turn around there's some sort of digital, I call it digital interference in your life, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's easy to fall into the habit of putting a video in front of your kid, and the tablet becomes a babysitter because they get engrossed in it, and you're able to do whatever you need to do, maybe even just like close your eyes for a moment and take a breath. Whatever it is you got going on, it's easy to fall in those habits. And you walk into a room, and if you have more than one kid and each kid is on their own device, they're not even talking to each other. And so that is all of that kind of brought up this concept of, can we do a digital detox? Can we
Right.
take a step back away from the electronics and be able to truly authentically connect with other people?
Well, and I don't know when the last time anyone, it seems really easy, like, oh, just set your phone down. But we know that there is an addictive quality. I mean, how many times you pick up to check the time, to use your camera, to, set alarms, to like, there's so many, and it's not to vilify the device, right? Because it's a great asset. I mean, we use it as tools in our business all the time. However, it's the overuse that we're looking at. Are you getting sore thumbs, because of hands on the device all the time? And how is your eyesight? Like, how is that being affected by the type of screen that you have and looking at it all the time? And so, one of the tools that we learned, I think originally from our friend Todd Durkin, about the 3-2-1,
Mhm.
which is a tool we'll go into a little bit deeper about how you actually create some structure around when you're going to use your device and how you wean it off, because we know there's so many studies around how it affects your mental, emotional, how sound asleep that you have. And so what are some of the traditional things that you have come up with, some tools to help you transition into a deep, good sleep so that you can restore and you can get up the next day to fight the next fight? But to be able to have some of those tools in place is so important, because people do struggle with having good sleep, and then you're not restoring, and then you're not at your best self. So there is this, a domino effect of how our devices actually affect us that we maybe haven't had a conversation about in a long time. And so one of the things that's good about this season, regardless of when you listen to this, but in the season of winter, you get a chance to kind of slow down a little bit in areas where there's snow, and where the nature actually comes into play, to have you do some of that hibernation and to do things a little bit different than you do in the summer. When you live in places like we do here in Southern California, you don't always take that time to have that shut down and to shift. And we always talk about, we're going to take a day off, right? And we don't always do that. And if we look at traditions and family traditions, as far as Sunday, whether it was a day of worship, it was a day to be with family, it was a day to be out in nature, and it was like this forced shutdown, including digitally, that allows you to reset. So there's so many different ways and tools that you can do it. It's one of those things where it's simple, but not very easy, because we do have that addiction.
Well, and the other thing that creates that addiction, for those of you that follow us on the IDEA.World website, you know that we're all about neuroscience, personality science, core human drivers. On the neuroscience side of things, we talk a lot about the dose chemicals, DOSE, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. You get a dopamine hit, and dopamine's the feel good chemical. So you get a dopamine hit when you get a little ding, a little alert, a little chime from your phone. And maybe that's a notification about a text message or an email or a social media post or an update on a like or a share on a social media post that you did, any number of things. But each time your device makes that little ding, I want you to think about something. How quickly do you look at it? And some of you, you may be holding it in your hand or it's in your pocket, and it's literally almost an unconscious reaction. Your phone chimes, it vibrates, it does whatever to let you know, hey, I want your attention. And you just pull it out and you look at it and you spend whatever time you spend on it. Maybe you just dismiss it, or maybe you look at it and it's a spam call or a telemarketer call or an unknown number and you're like, nah, it's back in your pocket. Think about this for just a moment. If a child came up to you and went, Mom, 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 you'd be, shut up, leave me alone, be quiet, just wait. You wait, don't interrupt. What do you do with your device? You're immediately, oh. Do you love your device more than your child, more than your spouse, your family member, your life partner, or whatever label you want to put on it? Maybe you do. I don't know your relationship. If you do, then talk to us because we can help you with that relationship. But in reality, you don't. So what I'd like you to do is think about, how do you react to it? And this became really at the forefront as we spend time with our grandkids. And I realized that connection. I realized I was more forgiving of my phone than I was one of our grandchildren, who would come up and, Kerry, well, just chill out for a second. And here in my head, I'm thinking, I'll teach you good manners by not teaching you not to interrupt. Well, how do you teach your phone not to interrupt? Because it always is. You've got that do not disturb setting. That might be a way. We're going to talk more about strategies for a successful detox, but I want you to understand the neuroscience behind why you're doing what you're doing. And the last thing I'll say about this is, make no mistake, it has been documented, the minutes from the meetings at Facebook. I'm just going to use Meta and Facebook as an example. They met, they discussed, they strategized, they planned exactly how to increase engagement on their platform. They deliberately reached inside your head. They have flipped multiple switches, and I gave you just an example of one, the dopamine hit, to get you to engage more with their app, their software, their service. And if you take a moment to consider, hey, wait a second, these folks are doing this. Why are they doing it? What's their motivation? What's their end game? Their end game is to get you to use the app more, which makes them more money ultimately. So what's more important, your device or your kids?
Right. So when you sit back and you kind of get able to see just the challenge of what it feels like to just like, and the next time your phone dings, just count how many seconds you can wait before you actually pick it up, because it's probably going to be like 2 seconds, right? And so when you start realizing that you're just grabbing for that all the time, that's probably a good indication to be like, I probably need a little break from my device and have this happen. And we all get sucked into it. And, I've got, some of my besties, we love the memes, right? When the algorithms, and this is part of all of what they're doing to keep you hooked in, when they know the things that make you laugh, the things that you will buy, the things that you're interested in, they start pouring more of those things into your phone. And then you just keep clicking on it, scrolling, moving, like it's like faster, more type thing to happen. And, I've been guilty of this at night. Like I'll be like, one more, right? It's like, it's like gambling, right? At the slot machine. It's like one more thing, one more hit. And so one of the things that you can do is use these devices also for your benefit, for your good, where you set an alarm. And this is part of that 3-2-1 of like, having alarms go off like 3 hours before you go to sleep, where it says, okay, I'm going to finish up my meals, right? Because as entrepreneurs, sometimes you'll work right through not eating. So that's a good thing too, to go, okay, I want to make sure that I've eaten a good meal at the end of the day. Then knowing like, okay, at what point are you stopping work, right? And that's what we talked about, those boundaries around, okay, I'm stopping this time so that I can actually have some family time. I can have some, winding down time. Whether you work out, first thing in the morning, which we recommend because then, you're getting that handled. But, you may do some stretching at the end of the night. Some that might be part of your winding down. And it's interesting when you're actually kind of, taking that time to get off of your devices. Sometimes you ask like, well, what do I do if I'm not on there, right? Because you get so used to that. And so that last hour of the day of not having the device, in fact, if possible, to plug it in a different room so that you're not attached to just grabbing it. And that gets challenging if you use it for an alarm in the morning, right? So you got to kind of figure out what works out well for your lifestyle. At the very least, maybe put it on the floor so it's not like right next to your head. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to kind of break that up. But I think one of the most powerful ones is that last hour before bed, because if you get sucked in to being on your device right before you go to sleep, it's going to be more challenging to have that restful sleep and to have that set time of when you want to wind down. So actually having a book, like an actual book, those
Real, like
you turn pages, like, yeah,
it like
it's a
opens and
concept, right?
wow.
Things like that, or journaling, or, just being able to connect with the people in your life, right? And so seeing the things that actually allow you to kind of prep to wind down. And as an entrepreneur, how many times have you just like worked on the last thing on your computer and you're like literally like sliding into bed because then you're getting up early and getting it going? And there's going to be some days like that. We're looking at like, how are you intentionally, unplugging yourself? Maybe it's, 4 times a year that you're saying, hey, I'm going to take a weekend off or a day off or even an hour off your device, right? So you'll look and see how you can create some downtime in that actually allows you to be more productive.
There's other things that you're able to do. As an example, I have a setting on my phone when you talked about using the devices to help you pull away from the
Mm-hmm.
devices. Not just setting the alarms, which is an amazing function of my phone. I use that all the time. One of the key things I learned from Diane is set an alarm for everything, and that way when it pops up, you don't forget something. And the calendar reminders. But I have a setting on my phone that tracks the usage, and it tells me, hey, you've used your device X amount more or less than yesterday or last week. You can do the different settings. So literally using your device to help you save you from your device. Another thing that's kind of fun to do, if you get together, say for other people, you meet them for coffee, or it literally is just even, you can do this by yourself, but it's fun with other people. You go to dinner. Hey, everybody, phones out, face down on the table. Whoever picks up their phone first, they're buying dinner for all four of you. There's a challenge that you can do. Or if there's just two of you, whoever's turn to buy, whoever picks up their phone first. And when it starts buzzing and you're like, should I look at, oh, but it might be Diane calling me. You can set exceptions because if I look at it and it's not Diane, boom, phone's right back down. Maybe there's an exception for that. Maybe there's something going on in your family. A friend of ours, her dad's in the hospital right now. Well, we're not going to make her pay for dinner because she's checking her phone because she's getting an update on her dad being maybe sick or not sick. So that's an example of doing this with an exception that's reasonable. But that doesn't mean that you're sitting there texting, making a phone call, sending an email. That's not in the exception rule. It's a quick glance of, oh yeah, this is important. This is about my dad. So that's one way to do it. The other thing I just did this last night. I came downstairs and you asked me because you wanted to compare calendars. Diane said to me, Oh, do you have your phone with you? And I laughed. I went, no, I don't. I deliberately left it upstairs with the ringer off because I'm done with it. My last meeting of the night is over. I'm finished. I didn't bring it down. She's like, can you go get it, please? Because we need to talk about schedules for the next couple of days. I'm like, okay, that I can do. That I can totally do. But the intention was I'm not getting on it unless it's really important. And so what we did was we compared schedules. We got everything planned out for the next couple of days. And then bam, that phone was back, set aside, was not even in the same room, because it helps me relieve that temptation I have. And sometimes, again, that unconscious behavior of, oh, I just find it in my hand and I'm checking emails just to make sure.
Mhm. Right. Well, and speaking of schedules, I mean, one of the tools I think is really one of the most important things is your calendar, right? Because people talk about, well, I have to do this and I have to do this, but they don't necessarily look at their calendar as that tool that creates the structure of the kind of life that they want to live and what they get to do, right? And so there are those like have to do things on there, but how you orientate yourself to those things. Are you excited about doing those things? Do you have things on there that you dread doing? You got to get those things off. Those are things that, you need to delegate and have other people do, or know that you're spending a small amount of time on it, on the things that are like the building blocks that you then get to the things that you actually love to do. And so your calendar is a good tool to be able to look at. Do you actually have any days on there where you're not working, that you're not on your devices, that you don't have something planned, that you actually get to have that free flow days? And for some people, they think about those days as back to when they were a child and they were playing. Well, except for those who had child labor laws and worked when they were like, 3 at their dad's business, the kind of thing. But, you think about children having more expansive time, but we don't actually see that as much with children now. And think about with your children and grandchildren, they're so packed with sports and homework and so many things going on. Do they actually get to have that free time where they're not on a device, they're not actually sleeping, but they actually get to play and imagine? And I think we forget sometimes that's where we come up with the best ideas, is when we're out in nature, or we're just staring at a cloud. Like, when was the last time somebody did that? We forget how important that is, because we get so much into the hard skills of what has to get done that we don't give ourselves that time in our calendar to have that free space, because that allows us to restore and then actually come back and be more efficient than we were. So, there's so many studies where people just keep going and they're on their devices and they're working late, that catches up. And that's where people end up, having, they're in dis-ease and they have disease in their body, and they are not looking at the totality of their life and how they're spending that. And so, when we look at this, it's not just a frivolous thing. This is something that has impact on your health and your quality of life and what that actually looks like. So this is kind of that importance of really looking at when can you check out, and by looking at your calendar to know, hey, this is a day off. And even if you're retired, right, you still end up, I think a lot of people talk about, my days are more filled when I'm retired than when I'm actually working, because now you're maybe helping take care of grandchildren. There's things that are going on in the house. There's things that you're volunteering. There's always this building and more things to do. But just as much as we're doing, we also need to look at how are we being. And when we actually create that environment where we allow ourselves to take those deep breaths, to have a meditative or prayer experience, to walk out in nature, and to be able to just decompress without your devices, really allows you to ground yourself into receiving messages from God, to having better relationships, to actually have more joy in your life. So it's a much deeper level when we're looking at our devices.
When we talk about the joy, happiness, joy, gratitude, it's a positive emotional state. That means you're in an executive state. That's the best place to live. Research tells us that we spend 70 to 80% of our life in survival state, fight, flight, or freeze, not executive state, rest and digest. We don't want to be in survival state. When we're in survival state, our PFC, or prefrontal cortex, a major part of our brain is electrically, it's shut off. It's closed off. That means you can't think through problems really well. You can't be creative. You can't have empathy. You can't connect with another person because you can't have empathy. Cannot have empathy. Cannot connect with another person. You don't want to live like that. Nobody does. And sometimes our devices, especially if you're watching the news, if you're reading your news apps, oh, one more news story. One more news story is not going to make or break your day. 99% of what you read about in the news, number one, it's designed to create a survival state reaction. And the other thing it does is it puts you in a feeling of loss of control. You can't control the war in Ukraine. You can't control what's going on in the Gaza. You can't control a lot of this stuff. So it's the U's and the C's. It's the uncontrollable and the controllable. When you can filter through that very quickly, and being away from your device, taking a step back from it, helps you sort out those U's and those C's. And being able to look at, okay, what do I have control over? What do I have influence over? What can I have impact on? Then focus on that. You know, you mentioned the calendar. I did a podcast episode, look back a couple of episodes, where I said your calendar is your true values in action. Your true values, not what you think you ought to be living, not what you would like to, or other people have expectations on, but what is it day to day that you're actually doing? Those are a reflection of your true values. And if you don't like what you're seeing on your calendar, then change your calendar. Live your life by design, not by default. And you get to design your calendar. You use a really amazing phrase, and you use this through the years, and every time I hear it, it makes me smile, which is, what do I get to do? Not what do I have to do, but what do I get to do? And all of us at one point or another, we have some have tos. I have to pick up my kids from school. I have to feed them. I have to clothe them, because otherwise they'll be in like serious trouble and I'll feel horrible. But what do I get to do? I get to spend time with my kids. I get to connect with them. And that's a get to, that's a joy, that's a happiness, that's a gratitude, which again, positive emotional state, executive state, exactly where we want to be.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and people on SPAlife, they know that part of our acronym with SPAlife, the SPA, is seek power always, right? And it's that power within us. We get powered, with divine power, our intuition, when we rest and when we get to actually really listen to what our body needs, right? And we are multidimensional people, right? And so you want to look at, how is my physical body doing? Am I exercising it at the level that keeps me healthy? What am I doing mentally? There's so many things that can loop in our brain, but are we doing things to help increase our mental clarity and emotional wellness, right? Are we, flying off the handle on things where it's like, whoa, 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 do we need to put like ourselves on a timeout and really look at, how are we being affected by things, right? And listen to, those are all clues to what things are happening within us. And then once we handle all of those things, there's always a spiritual message for us. And, God has so many beautiful things to share with us if we give him the time and space. I find like I get my best messages in the shower. There's no one in there. There's not devices in there. There's a quiet time. It's like, why do you get some of your best ideas when you're in the shower, when you're in your car, when you're going for a walk? Because those are actual breaks from life that you get to have. And so when they're intentional, when you get to actually create that, then that's that co-creation that you get to have in life, to have the kind of experience that you want to have. And so one of the things that we always ask during our interviews is, because our environment is an impact to us, and I'm going to ask Kerry this, is that we live life different in our bedroom, our kitchen, our office. What's your favorite room in our home and why?
I'd say my favorite room is the living room slash dining room. They're like integrated. It's like one big room. But that's where all the family gathers. Like the other day, it was our grandson's golden birthday. He turned 5 on the 5th, and we had just it was just full of family, and we had some friends over, and the opportunity for everybody to be together. And the interesting thing was, nobody was on their devices.
Mm. Right.
Nobody was on. If you think back to that,
Mm-hmm.
that was a time when everybody was just, your parents were here,
Mm-hmm.
your daughter was here, our youngest granddaughter was here. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
was there. Not every single person that we wanted to be there was there, but a large amount of them were. And nobody was on their phones. They weren't texting, they weren't emailing, they weren't doing phone calls.
Right. Playing.
We were just together. We were eating, we were laughing, we were opening presents, playing with the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and just the joy that filled that room, and watching the kids run around and play, and being able to celebrate the day that our grandson was born.
Mm-hmm.
On a very special occasion, because his golden birthday, you said this, and
Mm-hmm.
I just loved it when you said it, and it hit me smack in the heart. This day will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true for every day, but this was special because it was his golden birthday, turning 5 on the 5th.
Yeah.
And actually, before you, I'd never heard about golden birthdays before. So your youngest daughter turned 30 on the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And when we had her, so she had to wait 30 years. You get born late in the month, you kind of get screwed.
Yeah.
But when you celebrate that golden birthday, it really makes that person feel just a little bit of extra special, even more than a normal birthday. And again, positive emotional state, executive state, and that's exactly where we want to be. And that dopamine hit
Mm-hmm.
of the family being together,
Right.
and the connection and the joy and the happiness, that dopamine hit is
Mm-hmm.
really pleasurable. And when you're getting that from people, from your circumstances, from your surroundings, rather than a fleeting, not even a tenth of a second of a ding or a chime or the sound of a coin dropping on the floor. Maybe that's a little bit longer, but that fleeting moment of a dopamine hit from a device
Mm-hmm.
does not even come close to a true dopamine hit from being connected with other people,
Right.
and experiencing that joy, happiness, and gratitude in your life.
Well, and as we see, so much increase on, AI and how these different ways where, electronics are helping and supporting our life, it does not ever replace that human connection, right? That whole thing about being able to, that's why it's so sad when we see like groups of kids together and they're all on their devices and they're not talking with each other. That is a breakdown of communication. I mean, just because they're sending something to each other, how many times have you received a text and you didn't get the context of that, right? And you took it the wrong way, right? And so there's nothing like actually speaking face to face with someone to be like, what did you mean by that? Or can you clarify that? Or, I need more information about that, or, why do you feel that way? It's like those deeper conversations where you can get into that questioning. And for us retired law enforcement, we're always coming up with, sometimes our friends call that the interrogators, because we do ask a lot of questions, but it's your come from, right? It's like, having, you're really wanting to get to know that person and to connect with them. And, especially, those of us who have, our parents are, they're in their 80s now. And it's like one of those, what are the real conversations that we want to have with them? And it's not just about picking up the phone. It's why we do, one of the activities our families do together is we like doing jigsaw puzzles, right? Because we get to be right next to each other. We can talk while we're doing it. And it's an interaction where it's not device ran, and it's about being together in the room. And so it's why people talk about breaking bread together and having a meal together, because you get to connect with that person. So really, as we kind of wind down this episode together, it's like really looking at in what ways can you do that digital detox, even for 5 minutes. Start with that 5 minutes, maybe then it becomes an hour, then maybe you're plugging it in and not having it with you when you sleep, right? There's so many different ways that we can utilize it for our benefit, but also be able to set it aside for our well-being on a much greater scale.
For the SPAlife listeners, if you go to TheIDEA.World /podcast, look for the episode on routines. I talk specifically about 3-2-1 and different, morning routine and an evening routine. All of those are device independent. It doesn't, you're not on your device during that time. The ironic thing is, people are listening to this on their
A device.
So don't put your device down yet. Should have said that at the very beginning.
Right.
But the thought just literally entered my mind.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah, that's what you're doing right now.
Right.
When you're done with this episode,
Yeah.
take a look at this other episode on your device and the 3-2-1. 3 hours before bed, no eating. 2 hours before bed, no work. 1 hour before bed, no electronics.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prep for that? How do you be successful? Have a real book, or even better, a journal and your favorite pen for you to write in at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. I have an episode on journaling right next to, I did journaling along with the routines. And so I talk about the benefits of journaling, and journaling at night, journaling in the morning. Whatever, one or the other or both can work really well for you. And I describe that. So check those out and think about, where do you want to spend your time? How do you want to spend your time? Do you want to do it on a device where you're just only with that device, or you want to do it with another person? I'll tell you this, for some of us, that device is safe. It never makes you feel bad, generally speaking. It makes you feel scared because you read the news, but it doesn't shame you. It doesn't berate you. It doesn't get on your butt about something you didn't get done. And yet at the same time, it doesn't give you the real positives that another person does. So think about why you're on your device as much as you are, and think about what you want to shift, and then make that shift, because your life will be better. And that's what we're here for, is to help you live a better, more fulfilled life.
Perfect. And, for those of you on, the SPAlife listeners, our theme for this season, as you know, is intentional living. So, we thought this would be a great, at the end of the year, looking at how are you being intentional with your life, with your devices, with your relationships. There's so many ways that we can look at that in a bigger way. And, that's one of the reasons why we also do a lot of episodes together on TheIDEA.World, right? About how we can de-escalate, how we can actually show up better in our words and our conversations, so that we are being more intentional, that we are looking at, even from a safety standpoint, if you're on your device, you're not being safe. You're not having situational awareness. You're not being able to look at what's going on around you. So we need to break that habit, not just for our mental clarity, but also for our physical safety, to be able to know what is happening around us. I mean, how many videos have we seen of people who they're looking down at their device and they get attacked, or they're not paying attention and they get into, a collision or something that happens along those lines. So there's so many different safety rules and tips that really support you. And there's a lot more of those to look at when we talk on the idea.world. So, you can join us on both platforms. And any final thoughts?
Thanks for being here. It's always great spending time with you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing as well.
To our listeners, thank you for being here. Thank you for the honor of your time. You've got two great resources. You've got DianeHalfman.com, where you can find the Live Your SPAlife podcast. You can also find it on any of the major platforms like Apple and Google and Spotify. You've also got TheIDEA.World, TheIDEA, TheIDEA.World. You can find our podcast at /podcast. Tons of resources on our website to help you have an amazing relationship, be able to communicate, negotiate, and de-escalate in crisis situations. We also have the Idea podcast, free to listen to multiple episodes that cover these type of topics, as well as interviews with amazing people So please check both those sources out. And until next time, please stay safe.
Until we connect again, live your SPAlife. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.